It's an experiment I've been wanting to try for quite some time and finally got my hands on some cassette tapes. Join me in the studio for some gel print fun. Getting started with Payne's gray and Prussian blue on my two 5x7 plates, copper, quinacridone magenta, and cadmium yellow medium hue. I have multiple sizes of brayers, and my paint is Liquitex Basics, which I mostly use, and I have a cassette, which is my experiment for today. I've been wanting to try this for a while, but I didn't have a cassette. I start out with a little Payne's gray and Prussian blue because I want a nice dark, it would seem to be background, but when you're working with gel printing and pulling a print, a layered single pull print, your bottom is your top. I got too much blue, so it's way more weighted to blue than I had intended. If you have a clean roller, you can roll extra paint off your gel plate. You want a thin layer. I tried to darken this a bit, but there was only so much I could do, and I didn't want to waste paint. I did decide to pull out an 8x10. I do like these to put the plates on for my videos because unlike the glass, which I love because you can turn it over and see the back, this doesn't reflect. You don't see a big rectangle in the middle that is the iPad I usually film these videos with. Using a gel plate as your palette, if you have the option, is great because then you get a bonus print. My first attempt with printing with the cassette was a little disappointing because in the area above the part that sticks out wasn't making enough contact with the plate. So for the next, I just went over the edge to eliminate the problem and see how it turned out. I was trying to find the right amount of pressure to get the entire cassette, but I did have the paint a little thick, so it did squish around more than is ideal. It's also a good idea to let the paint get a little tacky when you're doing a next step like this. And back to spare gel plates. It's also, if you need to have a roll-off sheet, convenient to use a gel plate as a roll-off, again, to have bonus prints. Using these methods, I never end up with just one print when I set out to make a particular type of print. I am layering these because, as you will see at the end, it does create an interesting depth. And I did just speed things up here so you didn't have to watch me dithering in real time. As you can see, I just kept layering. And there I was listening to music, so I must have been moving along in time with it. I decided to also add some circles. As I often mention, a collection of circles is a great thing to have in a mixed media studio, even if you don't have an actual studio. Placing circles in sort of random places, in part to show on the video how these things end up looking layered. I have no idea what this was the cap to, but I do have a little container full of them that also is a circle. I believe a cottage cheese container, so I have various sizes. Before you add a pull layer, you need to make sure that your original layer is dry. This is the roll-off 8x10 gel plate. There will be a link in the description to my 5x7, 8x10 pairs. As you can see, I have two of them. They are still the best regular price bargain I can find, and they are available on Amazon. I added copper for a little glow. I love to use this combination to get the yellow and the magenta and the orange they create. I should have put the copper on first. I should have spread the copper first so the glow would show. And this is too much paint. So I am rolling off on a sheet of paper, which will also create a spare collage paper. And that looks pretty interesting. And you can see the glow. You could also see that there was some blue and Payne's gray left on my brayer. Payne's gray is kind of like a navy blue. I started to pull this with the cardstock, and then I knew there was too much paint. So I decided to pull some of it off gently with a piece of wrinkled tissue paper. I pulled off a little more than ideal. I love this glow. Since I didn't leave a significant amount of paint, I knew it wouldn't pull, it was too dry, so I added a layer of matte medium. Spread it out relatively evenly, should be evenly. And you can see an issue you can develop if your paint is too thin and you overwork it. I pulled up a little of my top layer, making sure my cardstock is evenly and thoroughly touching the surface of my plate and rolling off a bit more of the copper. The blue that is coming off on the edges of this demonstrates how the matte or gel medium can sort of reactivate the paint, and also just how far a little bit of blue acrylic paint will go. I know this is true of the Prussian and the phthalo blue, which are the two I usually use. Going back to the quinacridone magenta and cadmium yellow medium hue. I'm using the wider brayer here because I wasn't as interested in blending the edges. However, I do have some really harsh edges, and I really don't like harsh edges. Usually by starting with the palette plate, I can avoid having such distinct edges of my colors, but that's not quite how it worked this time. Again, placing my paper, which is heavy cardstock. I typically do use my baren, but it wasn't handy right then. Some more roll-off paper on the other end of my odd-shaped piece of tissue paper I used. When you use tissue paper for a gel print and in a collage, the white parts of the paper will become translucent in your collage. Some interesting glow there. And the first pull. It's coming off relatively cleanly. I lost a tiny bit of blue on that one edge you probably saw. And here are the cassettes and circles with their interesting layering. As you can see, I did end up with some harsh edges between my colors, and the quinacridone magenta, not as modulated by the yellow, and underneath the bluer top layer is a little too dark, so there's not as good contrast. When I started to pull the roll off print, I found that it wasn't quite dry enough, so I put it back on the plate. I didn't end up saving the whole thing. One thing you could do when part of a print is sticking to your plate is put some more medium in that area and let it thoroughly dry, and it will usually pull up what was detached. I think the part I partially made bare with the medium looks pretty interesting. Here is my cassette tape experiment. I may not have gone quite dark enough on my top layer and didn't get enough contrast with my colors, but good experiment, and I will use cassettes again. Here are the rest of my bonus papers. I would love if you shared in the comments what you think of this quick session in my studio, and I'll be back with more sooner rather than later, I hope. Be sure to like and subscribe and make art, because we are better with art.